Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? That PSN service agreement got kind of long. Does that, in essence, does that mean we're passing on the credit card fees and any other fees to the payer?
No. So what we do right now, when we accept credit cards through we're going to treat it like we do a credit card. They just charge us $1.50 a transaction or whatever.
They charge the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just one other, the PayPal, the Pay Later, and the Venmo are just another way for our customers to pay us.
Okay. What's the metering and technology solutions, the 4 low lead bearer meter? You know what that is, Brian? 55 gallons, 6D.
There's
That's those meters that were just delivered this week.
Those are just meters to have on hand.
Oh, it's 4 water meters.
Yeah, we use a
Okay.
bunch of 1-inch water meters for houses.
Yeah, okay. Hearing no further discussion, we'll call for a vote on the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Brett.
Good evening.
Hi.
Within your guys' packets, you have a feasibility report for a proposed 2024 street and utility improvements project. Again, this spring, the Street and Utilities Committee, myself and the staff got together, looked at a few areas of town that we think require some improvements. You guys approved the feasibility report proposal last month. I'm back here tonight to present that to you. Following that, let's just go through the presentation. We'll talk about the improvements that are proposed and answer any questions. Again, it's for a 2024 street and utility improvements proposal. I think the easiest way to go through these is to turn to the figures, and we'll just walk through it. There's 2 sets of figures. They're both the same, with the exception of one of them is tied to the assessment roll. But you can look at either of the set of figures, and I'll go to figure 1. We broke this improvement feasibility report up into 3 different areas. First being 4th Street North corridor. And so we're looking at 4th Street Northwest all the way from the bike trail, which is the unimproved gravel roadway portion of 4th, heading east down to 2nd Avenue Northwest, and then following all the way east to Main Avenue or US 52, and then going from 52 all the way down to the golf course parking lot. Now that roadway consists of many different types and existing conditions of roadways. For instance, at the bike path on the west side of 4th, it's existing gravel at about 22 feet in width. We're proposing to put back a 22-foot wide bituminous pavement section with 2-foot gravel shoulders. That'll give you a 26-foot wide top. A little bit wider than it is right now. We think we can do that with simply grading and paving. and we'll get a hard surface all the way out, past the DNR and SNA Petroleum properties and all the way out to the bike path. Heading west, once we hit Second Avenue Northwest, existing is a rural section roadway with ditches, no concrete curb and gutter. We're proposing to put in a 20-foot wide face-to-face concrete curb and gutter roadway to control that drainage. And that typical section runs all the way through past Quick Trip and over the Main Street at Trunk Highway 52. As you flip to figure 2, now we're looking at the east side of this corridor. Existing is a 29.5-foot wide face-to-face concrete curb and gutter urban section roadway. We're proposing to leave that section in place or to reconstruct the same section back. We won't widen it or narrow it at all, but we're looking at replacing that section up through Second Avenue Northwest and staying with that section actually until Second Avenue Northeast. At that point, we'd taper down to a rural section again, but with a 22-foot wide bituminous top and gravel shoulders, the same section that's on the west side, west of Second Avenue, northwest. That would follow all the way through and tie into Fourth Avenue Northeast and then taper down into the golf course property or at the golf course property. Throughout this corridor, on the west side of the road, we have water and sanitary sewer improvements that are necessary. Same thing, I guess, on the east side of the road. We have sanitary sewer and water main that is in need of replacement and repair. The sanitary sewer, we had televising tapes, or Ryan had televising tapes done. It needs to be replaced. The water main is undersized and not looped, and we don't have many valves. We had quite a few instances back in the 2020 project where when we had to turn off some water, we ended up killing, or Brian ended up killing the whole north third of town just because of the way things are valved off and looped and not looped. And so we're solving those issues here. For instance, we'd be looping, there's a hydrant vac and handle equipment that is a dead end coming from the south that just stops. We're looping there. We're also proposing putting in a dump station at the campground in town. That's 4th Street Northeast. The next area that's singled out here, I call it Snake Alley, I guess. It's portions of 5th Street Northeast and 2nd Avenue Northeast. The concrete curb and gutter is in decent condition there. The pavement surface is starting to fall apart, and on top of that, we have some concerning drainage issues in that intersection of 2nd Avenue Northeast and 5th Street Northeast. So what we're proposing here is a reclaim and repave improvement where we leave the concrete curb and gutter in place to the extent that we can. We would obviously replace panels and sections that are heaved or sunken to make it uniform and make the surface drainage work. But we would replace then the pavement section. We would also be putting in we propose some storm sewer in that intersection of 2nd Avenue Northeast and 5th Street Northeast, and then routing that to the west to tie into the system that's existing under Trunk Highway 52. And so again, the Snake Alley would have a brand new pavement surface. It would have new drainage facilities. It would have curb and gutter replacements as necessary. And it would have new curb and gutter, I guess, on the north side of 5th Street Northeast, simply because of the storm sewer installation process. The sanitary sewer in this area needs some rehabilitation as well. Because the concrete curb and gutter is in such good shape, and because we do not believe there's any need for any water main replacement, what we're proposing is a CIPP liner for the sanitary sewer. If you look at that figure 3, you'll see the sanitary sewer is in the south third of that corridor and 5th. And then it's right down the center of the corridor on 2nd Avenue Northeast. If we were to open cut and replace that, we'd end up completely reconstructing this corridor, and there's really no need for that. So we're looking at a CIPP liner improvement for that sanitary sewer within the corridor.
So
And-
that's just inserting a liner in the existing pipe?
Yeah, you guys did a little bit this year. Ultimately, what you do for people that aren't aware or haven't been around it, you clean the sanitary sewer line, and then you pull down, it looks like a sock down the sanitary sewer, and then you pressurize that with steam and it cures it out. Ultimately, what you end up with is a fiberglass, fiberglass lining within that existing sanitary sewer. That existing sanitary sewer pipe works as the mold, and then they send a robot up and they cut out the individual services. So
And did you say the storm sewer is existing there now?
there is no storm sewer.
There is-
Right now, that Second Avenue Northeast and that Fifth Street Northeast intersection doesn't look like a 90, the way that I have it proposed to be. It's a T intersection with no improved roadway going off to the east. And it just ditches out into a flume, and what happens is we get so much sand and we get so much junk there that I think if we wanted to try to maintain that drainage the way it is right now, your staff would be cleaning it out 4 to 5 times a year, and it still doesn't work. And so, we took a look at it, and we think we can pipe that drainage back to the west. And it would tie into the existing sanitary sewer, or storm sewer. The existing storm sewer that ties into Trunk Highway 52, approximately 150 feet into Fifth Street Northeast.
Okay.
So we make that connection there. The last area of improvement that we took a look at was Main Street alleyway, which is the alleyway running adjacent to Main Street on the east side of the road between First Street Northeast and Center Street. And so this is an alleyway that you guys are getting TLC, or you already did.
You did.
To pull the surface this fall. In the spring, there's electrical improvements. I believe we're bringing all the electrical underground in there. And then we're simply looking at subcutting the roadway, building back up to the aggregate base and paving everything back. If you look at this improvement on Figure 4, you'll see that we're not just going in and doing the alleyway. And this is going to be a discussion to be had in the future, once we get into the design, if you move that way, with council and staff. How far do we want to go? Do we want to get easements from these properties and actually pave back all of the surfaces that are back there? Ultimately, the city has, I believe, a 20-foot wide alley right away. Most of the businesses back there have some kind of rear alley parking or dumpsters or something back there. And quite frankly, it doesn't work to come in and just do a 16 or 20-foot wide alleyway and leave all the adjacent pavements the way they are. At least it's not very easy to do that and make it actually work. So we're proposing to do all of it. The question that will come back to the council is, first, do you want to do that? Second, can we get the easements from those properties to do that work? And third, how do you want to assess that back to those properties? Do you want to tie it all together and do it as one improvement with one assessment across everybody, or do you want to assess additional to the properties that have extra parking on private property? But simply, we're just looking at coming back there, rebuilding the roadway after the pavement's been stripped off now and the underground electrical utilities are done in the spring. And so we'll come in there and clean up everything on the backside of that improvement project.
And I think I heard this before, but west of the water tower, that is city parking, or is that owned by one of the businesses?
That's city property.
Yeah.
So that's city property, but you can see that I'm showing a little bit of paving behind Osby's property, a little bit behind the other 3 properties. They're in the middle of the block on the north side, on the west side. And I guess a little bit on the far south end on the east side. There's a couple of properties back there that have existing concrete pavements that we would tie into, just like we did in 2020 when we went behind the church there. We tied into the existing concrete pavements and paved everything else back. So if it's existing concrete, we'd leave it. If it's existing bituminous, but it's in the same condition as the alleyway was, I would propose replacing it.
And that's, and we're assuming we would assess that to the businesses. And would we make
I would
that,
assume
you're saying
that, I
not,
would assume that 40%, no matter what, 40% of street improvements are assessed back. Now, the question is whether you want to wrap that together and assess it back to everybody, or whether you want to individually take that improvements that's on that private property adjacent to the alleyway and have a secondary special assessment against that property just for that improvement. And that's, you know, it is an improvement on their private property, so that's probably the fairest way to do it, but we would have those discussions once we got into design. If we want to pursue that, first we'd have to get easements from those properties. So we would have that discussion with them, that this is our intention, this is why we need the easement. If they don't want to do it, they don't sign the easement. And then I guess we don't assess them. But otherwise, if they sign the easement, we would have that conversation up front. So they didn't know what they were getting into. There's a couple different ways to look at the cost for these improvements, and I'll start. By
well,
looking at-
before you get to that,
Yeah.
just give everybody a brief review of our process when we're looking, it's like, well, why are these streets getting done and not some others? And we have that schedule we have where we've
Yeah.
rated the streets,
Yeah.
just to really
So-
brief on that.
Yeah, and it's all within the report, but I'll just speak on it quickly, but I believe back in 2012, we did a pavement management plan. And so we went through town and we graded every surface in town, and we broke that up, not on a block by block basis, but on a 1 to 2 block grouping. Ultimately, what we did is we divided the town in quarters between Main Street and Center Street. And so, for instance, if we're looking at 4th Street, we'd be looking at 4th Street northeast from probably the gravel section over to Main Street, and we'd be looking at 4th Street northwest, or northwest from that section, and northeast from 52, probably out to 3rd, is it 3rd? 2nd Avenue Northeast, or Second Avenue Northeast, because then from there it turns to a different section of roadway. And we graded all the pavements. We put together a plan on how we were gonna go through town and which improvements were, or which roadways were in need of continued maintenance and a seal coat schedule, some patching, maybe a mill and overlay. We put together some roadways that were beyond that type of improvement and in need of a full reconstruct, and pretty much said, let's stop spending our maintenance money on these roadways because they're beyond maintenance and they need to be on a reconstruction process. We also took a very quick look at the underlying utilities. It's good to address your utility infrastructure needs at the same time you're doing your streets, right? We don't want to put new streets over old utilities. We really don't want to have to build a new street over utilities that don't need to be touched either, unless that's the way it happens to work out. But we put that together in 2012. Since then, we've done 3 to 4 improvements. We did one in 2020. We did one in 2017. In 2014, I guess we did CASA 35. We've done 2.5 improvements since then. That's why you saw a mill and overlay on 3rd back in 2020 and that reconstruction of 1st Avenue Northeast back in 2020. In 2017, you saw the reconstruction of the roadways on the west side of town, south of 3rd and west of 1st Avenue. So 4th, 5th, 2nd. So we've been working our way through that pavement management plan, and these are the next roadways on the list. Obviously, the alleyway wasn't something. I don't think the alleyway was looked at in that pavement management plan. I'd have to go back, but 4th Street North has been a priority since that 2012 improvement project. And the way that the pavement surface has started to deteriorate up in Snake Alley and that continued storm drainage issue that your city staff is having in maintenance, that's why that one is so high up the list too. So that's how we decided on the 3 different areas that we're looking at. We'll quickly look at the cost here, the pricing. go to page 4, we start with our project cost analysis. And table 1 shows the estimated project costs. Area 1, 4th Street North, estimated project costs are 1.7, just over 1.75 million. Area 2 for Snake Alley is 334,000. And area 3, Main Street alleyway, is 116,000. That gives you a total estimated project cost of just over 2.3 million if you review all 3 areas. Now that includes the sewer, the water, the services, and all of the street improvements, as well as the storm sewer improvements. So if we want to look at those improvements and actually what that 2.304 million is actually, what that's going to. The street improvements in those 3 areas comes out to just over 1.48. Sanitary sewer main, 211,000, water main, 404,000, storm sewer, 95,000, water services, about 75,000, sewer services, about 38,000. These improvements are typically paid for by bonding, and then those bonds are paid back by your utility enterprise funds and your general levy. And so, another strong portion of how we pay these back are special assessments. So you guys have an assessment policy that's in place. Your assessment policy says, within this report, it tells you the different things within the assessment policy that relate back to this project, but your policy essentially says that the city pays for all the water main, the city pays for all the storm sewer, the city pays for all of the sanitary sewer main. But then you assess back 100% of the sanitary sewer services and 100% of the water services. So if we replace the water main and we give you a new water service that goes from the main to your property, your 1-inch service that feeds just your house, you're going to pay for that. Same thing with a 4-inch sewer service that goes from the main to the property line. Those are assessed directly back to the property owner that's benefiting from those services at 100%. On top of that, the adjacent properties get assessed 40% of the street costs. And so we take all the street costs together. We take 40% of those costs. 60% is paid by the general tax levy. The remaining 40% is paid by those adjacent properties back in assessments. The way we typically divide those up is on a front foot basis, and that's how I would recommend this. So if we go through and we figure out that the street costs are so many dollars, we take that accessible front footage throughout the corridors. We divide that dollar amount, that 40% dollar amount, by the accessible front footage, and you get $1 per front foot. So someone with a 100-foot lot pays more than someone with a 60-foot lot. Someone with a 150-foot lot pays more than that person with a 100-foot lot. If you live on a corner lot and you have 2 properties being assessed, or even if you only have 1 property being assessed, whatever your address is considered your frontage. Whatever your side house is, your side street is, that's your second frontage. Your secondary frontage is assessed at 20% of the footage. So let's say you lived on a 100 by 100 corner foot lot, and the street in front of you is being reconstructed, as well as the street on the side. You'd pay 100 feet for your frontage, where your address is, and 20 feet for your side. So that corner lot would pay 120 feet, not 200 feet. So once we took a look at the preliminary assessment roll here and looked at the assessable front footages, table 3 shows what we came up with for assessment rates. We broke these into 3 different areas because these 3 areas are extremely different. There's a full reconstruct on 4th Street Northwest. There's urban section or rural section roadways that are being reconstructed as urban section roadways. There's gravel roadways that are getting a bituminous surface. So they're getting a major improvement. Where Snake Alley is getting a new surface and some stormwater improvements, and Main Street alleyway is an alleyway, a rear alleyway. So we broke these into 3 different areas with 3 separate assessment rates. Per our policy, the street assessment for 4th Street North, there's 3,652 accessible front feet up there. When you take the $431,000, which is 40% of those street improvement costs, you get $118 a front foot. Water services, there's 19 of them. We estimate that being just under 4,000 a water service, and sewer services, there's 14 of them. We estimate that being just over 2,700. Snake Alley, there's just over 2,000 feet of frontage. When you take 40% of those street costs, which is $109,142.14 divided by that 2002, you get $54.53 a front foot. And then back to the main street alleyway, there's 1,067 of footage. When you divide that by the 46,420.37, which is 40%, you get back to an assessment rate of $43.50. So per your policy, if we assessed everything and if the council didn't make any changes to those rates, which are figured directly off your policy, you'd be looking at assessments just under $700,000. So out of the $2.3 million of the project cost, you can expect just under $700,000 worth of assessments. We have had a number of councils that have taken a new look at their assessment policies just because of construction costs going up drastically, and trying to make sure that they stay in a reasonable range for assessments. I think your assessment rates are reasonable, but they are on the high side for fourth. 118 a foot is that's the real number, but it is a little bit on the high side. Maybe that needs to be closer to 110, 105 a foot. So if you decide to move forward, you may want to take just a little bit of a look at some of these assessment rates. But ultimately, it's not going to change much. So your $700,000 worth of assessments that you plan on getting in, even if you made a change there, it wouldn't reduce your total assessment number by that much. It wouldn't really change anything in your bond. Within the report, there's obviously text that says everything that I just said. You can get to Appendix A, which shows you a breakdown of all of these estimated project costs for all three areas. Appendix B are the improvement maps that I'm showing here that we've been talking through. The Appendix C is the preliminary assessment roll. When we put that preliminary assessment roll together, the figures that follow that have numbers that correlate back to that assessment roll. So if you're wondering, okay, how would these properties within this corridor be affected financially for the assessments, you can look back and kind of see how your assessment policy ties into this project specifically. One thing that we could also talk about as far as your assessment policy, your policy does allow you guys to do a per each assessment. Instead of a lineal front footage assessment, you do a per each assessment. We don't do a per each I don't recommend a per each assessment in many instances. Your policy is very similar to my other communities' policies. We have utilized that per each assessment on improvements like your Main Street alley improvement. It really doesn't change much there. You have a minimum frontage and a maximum frontage within your policy, meaning that if you have a 30-foot wide lot, we're still going to assess you for 60 feet. That's our minimum. And if you have a 200-foot wide lot, only going to go up to 150 feet. But you get down to that alleyway and you see how narrow some of those properties are. Ultimately, everybody's being assessed the same. But an easy way to do that is instead of going through and dealing with a front footage and taking someone that has a 40-foot frontage and inflating them up to 60 feet, and everybody ends up being 60 feet, just to do a per each assessment for those properties. It makes it quite a bit cleaner for rear alleys in downtown areas like this where everybody's got a narrow lot. But that's something you guys can exercise that if you'd like. But that would come quite a bit later. That would become at the assessment hearing. So what I would look for tonight is first, I'm here to answer any questions you guys have on this. And then after that, if you guys are okay with the feasibility report, part of the Chapter 429 process, if you were to move forward with this project and use special assessments as part of your funding, is to approve this feasibility report. And then if you want to move forward for 2024, I would recommend that tonight you call for a public hearing for your October meeting, in which at that time I would come with a single handout we would invite everybody within this project corridor. I'd come with a handout for everybody. I would give the same presentation to everybody within the corridor, and then after that meeting, or at the end of that meeting, after the public hearing, you guys make the decision if you actually want to move forward with design and bidding or not. So with that, any questions regarding the report?
Yeah, when we see state of Minnesota DNR, do they pay the assessments? Do we assess them and get the money?
I believe so.
Good.
I don't know that I've assessed the DNR yet, but I've assessed Fillmore County. Assessment policies or the law here is even if you're not a tax paying entity, you can still be assessed. So we assess the counties, we assess churches, we assess schools, we assess everybody that owns property adjacent to our corridors. I believe that we can assess the DNR, yes.
With regard to the front footage on Fourth, from Second Avenue Northeast to the golf course, there's not a whole lot going on underground for reconstruction, correct? Just the water main?
Second Avenue Northeast down to Fourth Avenue Northeast, just the water main replacement. yes.
Yeah, and then the road itself, is that in that poor of condition as far as the asphalt condition or health?
It's not in very condition and it's extremely narrow. So we're looking at doing everything. When we replace water main like this, and this is another instance where Fourth Avenue Northeast water main and the Second Avenue Northeast water main aren't moved. Water main comes from the north down Fourth Avenue Northeast, and that ends at a hydrant right there on the Tromos. And the same thing with the Second Avenue Northeast water main. That comes down Second Avenue Northeast and then heads to the west. And so this is another instance where we have long water mains that aren't looped and it causes problems for us. So we're proposing to replace this. Now, water main, I think if I remember correctly, that roadway is 20 to 22 foot wide. I think it goes in and out between 20 and 22 feet, which is extremely narrow. Water main gets installed at 7.5 feet vary from the top of pipe to the surface, so we don't have freeze thaw issues. The narrowest you could ever even hope to keep a trench is a 1-to-1 slope. So at 7.5 feet down, we're looking at 15 feet wide that we're ripping up the roadway. And so by the time you install that, I know that's shown on the north shoulder of the roadway, which is probably where we'd be, but we would have that road completely ripped up to center line just to install that water main. So at that point, we replaced it.
And how wide are you proposing it to be? 22 feet?
22 feet wide paved with another 2 foot gravel shoulders on each side. So ultimately 26 foot wide of driving. 22 feet wide gives you two 11-foot lanes. And so if you've ever been driving through construction on an interstate or a trunk highway and they narrow you down between Jersey barriers, you're somewhere between 10 and 11 feet there when you're narrowed down. So for this roadway to be down at 22 feet wide, I'd like it to be at 24, but 22 is fine. Gives you 11 feet. Plus you do have that 2 foot of relief on both sides.
And how wide is it compared to now? How much wider will it be?
I think it's 20 right now.
It's 20.
It's between 20 and 21 right now. So if we're 22 foot wide paved plus shoulders, we're going to be gaining 4 to 6 feet in width, full width.
And then in area 2, you said for the sanitary sewer improvements, you proposed a CIPP liner.
Yep.
But in area 1, you're proposing a full replacement.
So in area 1, if you go to figure 1,
Yeah.
We're showing replacing or installing some sanitary sewer from Highway 52 to the west. Those 3 properties there have sewer that goes from that main out in 52 underneath each other's buildings, all tied together. It's a mess. There is no trunk main, and we've had issues with it, problems with it. So there is no sewer here. We are proposing to install sewer there. And when we get into the east portion of this corridor, by the time we reconstruct the water main and we have half of the roadway completely dug up, we might as well open cut the sanitary sewer. It's cheaper. I wouldn't say it's cheaper than open cut, but it's the same price and we're already reconstructing the roadway, so that's my proposal, yeah. Up in area two, I really, what I wanna do is I wanna save that concrete curb and gutter. And because we don't have any water main improvements that are necessary up there, I don't wanna dig up the sanitary sewer and lose curb and gutter all the time, but.
Okay. And then you said this proposal for budget has a 15% contingency.
Yep.
So the numbers we're looking at, is that inflated by 15% or is it the actual proposal, give or take 15%?
They're inflated by 50%. So these numbers are my interpretation, my estimation of what a publicly bid project will bid out at in March of 2024. So, we don't do the construction, we do the design for the city, we go out and we do public bid. So this is my estimate of what I think is going to come in at a public bid. So the contingency, these numbers are what I believe the numbers will be. The 50% contingency is because this is a feasibility report, right? We didn't do a survey, we didn't do any geotechnical, we didn't do any actual design. And so that 15% contingency takes care of the things that we haven't gone in depth on and included within that takeoff. It also helps cover some of the cost inflation that may happen between now and March of 24. Any other questions regarding the feasibility report? Again, if the council thinks that they want to move forward with this project in 2024, the next step would be to approve the feasibility report as presented and then call for the public hearing in October.
I'd make that a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the feasibility and schedule a public hearing. Hearing no discussion, we'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Library gift resolution. I'll make a motion to accept the gift.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? I want to thank Levon and the Todd family for the generous contribution. That'll be a nice little fund for the library for several years to come. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Preliminary levy.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2307.
Have a motion? I'll second the motion. Any discussion?
How did we settle on 3.5? As a proposed, instead of kind of bringing it higher and, I mean, looks like our financial advisor said if we leave it at a 3.5, we're gonna be looking at a 12 next year. I know that's a projection, but as a taxpayer, I would rather do it in increments than in a heavy one, a low one year and a heavy one the next year. And I think that would be easier to swallow by all taxpayers.
Yeah, I would say that was kind of driven by myself on the budget committee, wanting to keep it to a 3.5. The, I think if there's that big of a shortfall next year, we have the potential to dip into some funds. When we've had our annual audit report, the auditor expresses that we're pretty generously funded in our balances. But that was just the opinion of myself, and at the budget committee meeting, Domingo agreed with the 3.5%.
But if we set the preliminary higher, we can always bring it back down.
True.
So that is the worst case scenario. And if we continue to go through the budget and we determine that maybe we're going to be in a shortfall this next budget season, we can't raise it above that. Let's say we project a 4%. After you go through it, we can't do it.
Mhm.
We can always bring it back down. We can't raise it.
And I just believe in my short history on the council, going back to 2012, we've oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes we've put a cushion in and then rarely brought it back down, because you can always look forward and see lots of spending. But again, that's just my opinion.
Yep, and we just approved to move forward on a $2.3 million street project, improvement project, which is a bonding thing, which will change our numbers next year, obviously, because the bonds come out of the general levy proposal. So maybe we can cushion it a little bit more next year.
Mhm.
So
And it takes a little digging into, but the 2.3 million, if we do assess 700,000, that brings it to 1.6. The water main is covered by the city. Some of that could come from the water fund, although that's not
not super healthy in the water fund.
not huge, but it's at 460,000.
And again, this is just preliminary, so
Yep.
I guess my opinion would be to set the preliminary at that kind of estimated amount of 5 or 6%. At least.
So we'd add to the general fund levy. In what dollar amount are you suggesting?
Whatever gets us at 5 or 6% of the
Yeah.
proposed levy.
Um,
I didn't do my numbers before I came, I guess.
We're at 862.
Are you wanting to go to 5% or you want to do 6?
I would do 6. I mean, if I was going to do it, I mean, we have a motion on the table to approve this resolution, so that's 3.5, so we'd have to.
30,000.
Do another 2.5% off of that 862 would be $21,569.95. So 21,570 round up. That would be.
Yeah, this is currently at 3.6.
Yep.
And that's roughly $30,000.
Mhm. Right.
Oh, and I might have went on. No, I went on last year's.
think if I have it calculated right now, it's at 3.5%,
862.
right?
3.4
Yeah.
we're at now. 30,000. So you're considering moving up the general fund by another 30,000 or say
But
360 instead of 319?
you're talking about the general fund within that levy increase.
Yes.
So the total increase, if I do an overall on the tax levy at 6%, would only be like a $19,365 above what's proposed. If I did my math right. Because I took the old levy that was set and did a 6% increase, which came to $882,163, basically.
I'm just suggesting, since we do dollars, since we levy dollars, you look at the general fund,
Yep, I'm just,
we're at 319. Do you want to, are you thinking of moving that to 340 or 350 or 360? And then that would just flow through the bottom line and it would come in at that 5 or 6 or 6.5%, depending on which number. Yeah.
increase it by 20,000. So it'd be 339,000 on the general.
Okay, we'll call for the vote on resolution 2307 as shown in our packet. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Motion fails. Is there a new motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the total levy of 882,000, whatever the dollar is on the 6%.
798.
798.
Yeah.
With a change to the general fund or the general levy fund to $339,000.
I'll second that.
Okay, so just to clarify, because I think we don't have exact numbers here. So we're adding to the total capacity we had of 862,798, we're adding 20,
Basically 20,000, yeah.
20,000?
Yep.
Okay. And that's going on the general fund.
Correct.
Is there a second to that motion?
Yep.
Okay, motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Wastewater washer compactor.
AKA the sausage maker.
We have one that stopped working.
Yes, it's broken. It's letting things through, bottles, sand, grit, everything else under the sun. We talked about this a couple months ago. We tried to get 2 proposals from 2 different companies, and I think this is the only one that was reasonable.
The second proposal was to actually physically push it out
Build a
of,
building.
out of the building and into a dumpster, which would have required significant remodeling of the current wastewater treatment plant.
And
But
this,
this will retrofit into what we have.
so
All right.
it would be a recommendation from the utility commission to approve the purchase of this washer compactor. for the
I'll
wastewater
move
treatment.
to approve the quote and purchase.
Nice way to put it.
Second,
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Who was the second?
I was
Jesse was.
And if we move to a UV system, this will still work.
correct.
Mhm.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Harmony Spirits,
Harmony Spirits liquor license. On the license renewal from Minnesota Alcohol and Gambling, you'll see that there's two different licenses, one for cocktail room, one for off sale. One license expired in February of 2021. The other one expired in January of 22. I have worked with Alcohol and Gambling, Jay at Alcohol and Gambling, and he said that we were allowed to move he was kind of confused as to why we had two different dates, 2 different months and years of expiration. And he said that the cities, as long as the council was agreeable, we could move it in line with all of the other liquor licenses when they come due. So on the application for here, I have it for the first day of July of 23, going to the 30th of June of 2024. Minnesota Alcohol and Gambling has asked that we write a letter stating that we are aware that it's lapsed. We're understanding and just wish to move forward and want to put them on this new timeline and such. So just asking for the approval of that.
Make a motion to approve their liquor licenses for Harmony Spirits.
I'll second.
have a motion and a second. And it says prior years missed fees. How many years were missed? 1 or 2?
So on the, let me see, this one is on the cocktail room, was 3 years, because that expired in 21. So it would have been a renewal, we would have had to have renewed in 21, 22, and 23. And on the off sale, it's 22 and just 2 years, 22 and 23.
But we're fixing 23 here, right?
We're fixing 23, well, we're fixing 23 here, so
Yeah.
actually only,
1 and 2.
1 and 2. Yeah, we're fixing 23 here.
And that was a shortfall of previous administration.
Yep. And I did go out, I
It
did
was
inquire
caught-
with Alcohol and Gambling and said, did I miss printing off my own forms?
So I was here the day Larry came in and noticed that his liquor license was expired because he was having a different inspection done.
Mhm.
And yes, I would say it fell on prior administration.
Yeah, and I don't have any way of getting the renewal forms online. That actually has to come from Alcohol and Gambling, like the other forms do for the other businesses.
So the Department of Public Safety, alcohol, gambling, they don't collect any fees from them at all?
Nope. We are actually, I've learned a lot about alcohol and liquor licenses in the last few weeks. No, they go based off of our recommendation and ultimately the city council and the city itself holds the ordinance and holds the license. So it's the first time I've been told by a state entity that we tell them what to do. So they go based off of whatever your recommendation would be. I'm not sure what the Department of Ag and, like the distillery piece of it, but
But now they're paying for now back to July,
yes.
like July
Like as if
1st.
they were renewed in
And then
23 with the rest of
Next,
them.
or when do they renew again next?
Next year in June.
In June?
Well, we'll have the
So they're-
forms in like April, May,
May.
like
She's
we
a-
do with the other
You had
ones.
it set with alcohol to renew on the same time we do with the rest of the
Yeah.
licenses.
Yep, I've had that reset with them. To get them all on the same page and then they'll renew everything all at once.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Streetlights. I'll make a motion to approve the purchase.
Second,
Motion and second. Any discussion?
For these kinds of projects, do we bid out? Or not?
we have not in the past. This is usually how, so they get, so the streetlights are, we're gonna replace the same ones. They're continue the project, basically. It was started before I got on the council as they moved to the new streetlights that are on Main Avenue. And they're old, they need to, it's time to replace them. There's better technology, as you see. The bulbs are different colors, the poles are fading. So it's just a continuation, and this is, they quoted the poles from the same company that we've always bought poles from. So it's really the pole cost that gets us. As you see, the one is $6,300, so.
And that was going to insurance. I was actually waiting on this for like 4 months, so just to get a insurance replacement cost.
But they're, I mean, they buy them for less than that, but they charge us for the install and
Mhm.
Correct.
the labor.
Yep.
All right, we have motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Wait a second. Who motioned and who?
I
seconded?
motioned
I
Thank you.
second.
and
Thank you.
Jesse seconded. And there were no votes against. S&G website design.
Yeah, so, we've, since I've been with the city the last few years, and, well, just a lot of things have changed. People are expecting a little bit more interaction with the city. I found out that our current website platform, which, lack of better terms, it's clunky, not exactly the most user-friendly as far as design-wise in the background. When we want to go do something, you can only have pictures in certain areas and whatnot. Our contract is coming due with GovOffice, which is now Catalyst. Catalyst has bought out GovOffice. And thought it might be a good time to take a look at our website.
What was the cost of that one?
Catalyst.
Yeah.
They won't quote me on that until I sign a purchase agreement.
Interesting.
So, right now it's $660 a year for GovOffice. And with SMG, it would be $1,000 a year. Where right now we do all the programming, we do all of the integration with our website, where SMG would be able to take quite a bit of that off of our plate, be able to create interactive forms. We would be able to do, if you take a look at CETA's website, City of Preston, Canton, SMG takes care of all those. We would still be able to add content and modify content. If we have a snow emergency or something like that, we can go in the background. It's through WordPress, which I've used WordPress in the previous jobs that I've had with internet web design, and it's pretty user friendly and you can do quite a bit with it. So we were looking at putting it, we could even do a community calendar for the community center for maybe do an online form for signing up for the community center, paying that way. Take a little bit off of Lisa's hands to, coordinate in the summer seasons with different things going on in the gym. But winter is really busy with basketball and volleyball and all the other sports too. So just be a lot more interactive for people.
I'll make a motion to go with SMG.
Second,
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Is there any concerns regarding security that they offer for the website compared to our current?
This is a lot better.
It's a lot better.
Currently, so in, not to divert too much off of this, but this is gonna be coming up later in the coming months, but since GovOffice has been bought out by Catalyst, our email is also GovOffice, which we have a lot of security issues with, so we'll be having to convert from that as well. I just haven't figured out I'm still researching that and the best ways to go about that and domains and things like that. I did talk with SMG about hosting our email and doing a domain, and Michelle was preferable that we went with, I know, is it Google? Microsoft has a government and a work business account that we can go with for fairly reasonable. So still doing some work on that, but security wise though, no, it'll be just fine.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, we'll call for a vote. All in favor of going with SMG? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Well pump one? Or well one pump?
Well, one pump upgrade and inspection. I gave you a little bit of background on this, and I don't know if Brian wants to elaborate anymore, but part of our water protection plan, our wellhead protection plan, this would pulling the well and putting the camera down it, and inspecting the well would complete objective 5 of our wellhead protection plan. And they want to take the well one, correct me, turbine top is leaking, I do believe, quite a bit. So they want to take that turbine top, pump off, and put a submersible in like the other wells have. So with this, so the 8750 to pull the top, televise it, inspect the well, and do all that, the 8750, part of our wellhead protection, we can apply for a $10,000 grant, up to $10,000 to help offset that cost and to complete that project. So I did submit for that. In our wellhead protection, is it Scott? Yes, Scott helped us with that. So.
So the grant was just for the inspection, not
Mhm.
for any sort of construction or
Right.
replacement?
It's just for the inspection and televising and stuff like that. Pulling the,
Pulling and inspection.
yeah, pulling it, yeah, the pulling,
87, 90, whatever. Quote, that will be covered on the grant.
8750 is on the grant.
So when do we find out if we receive the grant?
I don't know, we
I think you
submitted it
pretty
like,
much get it, don't
we,
you?
I think it's pretty much guaranteed.
When
We
we went-
submitted it on day 2 when they were receiving grants, so,
That's when we went through the wellhead protection, you basically saw it. If you applied for
yep,
it.
if you apply for it, you pretty much get it, yeah.
So we're just approving the 8,700, the inspection.
No, I would like to,
52,491.
the whole thing,
Do you want included in that the Morham's bid too, in the total approval? So it'd be the 8750, the 52,491,
and the 29.
and the 29.
Right, because they have to bring in the,
So they gotta put a
The
new
wiring for the
transformer
new-
and- yeah.
the new pump, yep. And the,
Yeah, the new pump will be 480 volt instead of 230, so they gotta boost the voltage up.
Yep.
So that's where the Morms come in for the 30 grand. It'll be
transformer and everything. Mhm.
So it's the 8975 and the 50.
So that's the full meter, the new full meter would be the 8975.
Okay.
The Morms is the 30,000, and then the well is
Oh, yeah, 29.5. Yeah.
I'd make a motion to approve the total project.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
Will this be coming from water fund?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably a little bit, probably a little bit from electric too, to upgrade the, electric. Yep. So it'll be split between the funds.
Hearing no further discussion, we'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Utility meter update.
Do you want to talk about the utility meters?
I can, yeah. So we're putting some new water meters in, we realized our readers not be able to read them. Long story short, Itron's end of life was in 2021. Looking at upgrading to a system that we can actually read from the office and not have to go drive around.
Well,
On the electric side, the water side, we'd be able to do the same, except it's gonna take some years to get that rolling because you have to replace everything. But the startup cost is pretty minimal compared to some of the other options out there. Because we don't have to replace the technology. We don't have to replace all the meters right now to use this.
good.
Do that or upgrade the Itron stuff and it's out of date already.
Mhm.
Whatever we buy would already be pretty much out of date.
Will the new meter reader work with the old meters themselves?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be able to read everything we have still. with this system.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve the utility meter reader update. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Anything else for building and maintenance?
I don't think so.
No, other than I think
Oh.
Lisa and I have learned way more about meters in the last couple of days than we ever thought we'd learn in our careers.
I do have one thing with the old, it'd be Brian's old pickup. We will get that detailed and from Randy Barnes, it's minimal cost, but I think it's a good thing to do to make it saleable and hopefully get the best we can out of it. And then probably need a motion on what we want to do with it, whether it's sealed bids or if we want to have somebody try to sell it for us or whatever we want to do. But typically we do the sealed bids, and if we can do it so that we could approve the highest bid or whoever at the next council meeting so we can get it going.
The sealed bids worked pretty good for us in the
Yeah,
past.
they have. So we could put it out on the league has a
League has a
page,
site, yeah, League has
Facebook
sites
page
and,
and Facebook and all that.
Yep.
So
I'll make a motion to put them on sealed bids.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to put the truck on sealed bid.
do we want to set a date to
yeah.
finalize bids?
Can we just do that at the council meeting or?
Well, we can finalize them, but we probably, in case.
Well, when we do the advertisement, we're gonna wanna say that
They'll be
what we're
open.
for sale. And then we want a sealed bid by
Where the cutoff.
Thursday
Couple
at
days.
4:30,
Okay.
whatever date it is. But
So just
yeah.
the Thursday before the meeting.
Yeah, the fifth.
Thursday, October 5th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. EDA met and had a request from the chamber kind of gave them a new option. With the levy we have approved here tonight, gives the chamber an extra $17,000, which I think, is it all of that or a portion of that was going to be passed on to the chamber if they choose to continue with a full-time director.
And we also had a housing project committee, not formed, but it'll be coming up in the next few months.
Curious as to why the DDA went away from the original proposal by the chamber that looked to be about $2,000 versus ultimately going to the 17,000, which could create some issues, I think.
The previous ask from the chamber was more substantial. The chamber then lowered it because the general understanding from meetings held beforehand was that there would not be enough approval from the EDA to entertain the idea of funding in a greater fashion, I guess, the chamber itself.
And the budget committee kind of made it known that they didn't want the first EDA budget request, I think, came in at,
10,000.
no, the
Well,
first
no.
one,
The first one.
the 70,000.
No, that was very significant. So the first EDA request came in quite higher. So they were allotting $20,000 for a website redesign, $20,000 for signage on the north end of town and on the east end of town for those to be redone. Obviously, we found other ways to do that, so that was able to be pulled from the budget. Because I think it was like a 76%
Yeah.
increase that they had. It was quite substantial.
We also discussed a capital improvement fund and increasing the chamber's budget. So they could afford a director. When the budget committee came with the offering suggesting they cut their request to 10 additional. Having that news, the chamber came back and said they would need to drop down to a part-time director. And so the EDA at our meeting decided to request an extra 17 instead of 10. So that's what we did and offered that or a portion of it to the chamber if they choose to keep a director. So
Is that a one-time, so are we doing it for 1 year, or are we doing it for eternity, or what are we,
it's,
what are we doing here?
so we are limited to 50,000 to organizations or nonprofits. And we have to allocate some to rent for the building. And so there's going to have to be, some of that 50's got to be allocated to the Historical Society for the value of the building that they use, and for the chamber, the value of the building that they use. And so this number brings us to about, it's either 44 or 45,000 cash to the chamber from the EDA. And it really won't be able to go above that by statute.
And that's
Current
what-
statute.
I understand.
And that hasn't gone up.
I understand that part of what I'm asking. Are we fully funding this for the next 20 years, or are we fully funding this for
It's not-
1 year?
It's not fully funding at all.
It's fully funding what we
What
can
we're
give to
doing,
them is what
yes.
I'm
For
saying.
marketing,
Yes.
I look at it like, it's not likely that they're going to come in and need less, but it's possible. They could find some other revenues. They could do some fundraising. They could do things. But as an EDA, we see the value in the chamber. And I would say going forward, this is kind of what we anticipate is that's what the level would be going forward.
So then we can't donate to any other nonprofit organization for promotion of the city.
Yeah, just to clarify, so we're not just donating at whim. We can't just donate to any nonprofit organization at whim. The statute that Steve's referencing at 50,000 is we're allowed to spend 50,000 or share up to $50,000 with other organizations for city promotional things. So that's what we're talking about, promotional. Yes. So you're right. Yeah. If we put all of our money in the chamber, then right, we're not giving room to give to other organizations for promotional. So whether we do that or not, or need to do that or not, would be.
But there
for
really
discussion.
aren't any others to give to.
Depends where your auditors, there's many different opinions on what promotion of the city could be. I mean, it's very vague in statute, but it says promotion, advertising improvement or development, economic or agricultural resources of the city or town.
So we always, and it's always at the whim of future EDAs to
Correct.
request from the council and it's future councils too. So, yeah, I think our intention, my thoughts of the EDA discussion was this is what we're doing this year. The thought is we could continue it next year, but we can't make promises because there could be a new city council, could be new members on the EDA, and it's up to them. So the budget is an every year discussion, so.
It is, I would agree with that, but the intention of the EDA, I guess is what I'm getting at, is to continue to fund them at 45,000 plus the 5,000 for the building.
So speaking as EDA member who was there too, I guess my perception on it is the motion didn't specify, that wasn't part of the motion in this instance to prove that it would be only one-time funding. Didn't say it wouldn't either. But I think the attitudes among the EDA members was mixed. I think it ran the spectrum of whether people thought it would need to be permanent, temporary, or just one time year from the comments I heard from people. But
And the 50,000 that we have to spend on marketing is limited to that, but then there's a whole array of other ways that one can spend money and classify it as something else, correct?
well, I think what you're asking, Michael, is, for example, a city could control and pay for and run the town festival, the 4th of July festival directly. And right, that's not necessarily part of the $50,000 that the city can spend on promotions,
Yeah.
Separately.
Yeah.
So that was talked about in the EDA of if the chamber's current path doesn't have a sustainable amount of money to fund, a full-time director, what are other ways to achieve that? And that we talked about that in some of the meetings is, does the city need to directly take on some expenses that the chamber has shouldered? Is that one way to do it? But whether that's enough or not, or it needs to be done or not with this sort of request.
We discussed the possibility of the city hiring the director and then getting some reimbursement from the chamber for that, for the work they did for the chamber. But then that person could do tourism, which is a direct city expense. And even EDA, some cities are
So if we,
hiring a person that does EDA, tourism, and chamber. And I, for one, wasn't interested in another city employee. And then mixing, there were a couple people on EDA that thought you as a chamber probably don't want it to be a city employee because then their board only has partial control of that person. How do they get what they want out of that person if the person is under direction of the city council or the city administration?
And I don't see it being a problem with the auditor because there's so many ways to classify what is marketing versus what are other expenses.
well, that's an opinion that has to come from the auditor. I mean, it's just like we get Greg's opinion as our attorney. He has a different opinion than another attorney. I'm afraid we could lock ourselves in a hole where we could get in trouble And if we have to go through a state audit, we're in trouble. And I really do mean that. They're not gonna be kind when they do that.
Yeah, my opinion is this isn't going to put us to that level.
You just never know.
Right.
If they pull us and
But the
look,
17, I mean, you know, if we do another 17 to the chamber, we were at 28. We were gonna, if they stay with a part-time, they're asking for 30. You have the same problem there, whether it's,
well, it gives us a
whether
little,
it's
it gives
40.
us a little leeway though. I mean, we're only doing 30, so then we have 20,000 or 15, because if you give the building and that 5 as an estimated market value of donation, and maybe the opinion of the auditor is that donation for that rent space is more than that, you know, I don't know. And that's where we get into trouble with that. And it's the gray area of the law, but it comes down to the interpretation of those that are making sure that we're following the rules.
And our auditors, they're on our side. So they would tell us, you need to do more next year or less next year, if that's what.
Well, I think we should have their opinion before we willy-nilly just go get money here.
I'm awaiting an opinion. Just because if we were to get a request from Trail Towns and for an advertisement or, you know, and it's a city thing and that's an advertisement, it's a promotion, but we have 45 already tied up
We got 50 times.
or, well, right. But would we be able to do that? Or
Have we ever
Have
given
to-
to Trail Towns?
there's just been some discussion. No, we haven't, but we've also given to veterans. We do give to the school for our parks and recs. What is your definition of a promotion of your city? What do you consider a promotion of your city? And that is really broad across, I mean, it's as different as everyone's opinion, right? What is a promotion? So you could say that you are, you know, you're promoting your town by supporting your school with supporting Parks and Rec. I mean, it's still all general fund money, so it's still a donation to a civic organization. Is that going to be affected? I don't know.
The other thing I would say, and I don't know if the EDA has researched this or not, have you talked to your businesses that are members of the chamber and how they feel about this? Some of the businesses that have reached out to me personally probably won't be joining the chamber next year. I don't know how many that is. There's a couple for sure.
Which businesses are those?
I'm not going to say.
I mean, really, because everybody says that, oh.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, you're right.
That, as a chamber, they can go ask the businesses too. So I'm just saying that they reached out to me.
Me as well. I've had conversations too.
So there's a lot of concern on all of this and how this is being run. And I'm not saying it's being run wrong. Don't take that in any context of like that. But if we are losing money as a business, we have to figure out what our problem is and we have to come in with a plan. Right now, I haven't heard a plan on how to fix this all.
Well, that came in on the EDA level. They did come in with a plan to drop that to a part-time director. And we as an EDA liked their plan with a full-time director more. First, they came in with a plan with a full-time director.
Does that $17,000 fix our problem?
We don't know. So you're right, because they came into us at the meeting, said 2,000 more, we'll just cut the position. Like Steve was saying, we thought, man, there's maybe some lost opportunity there. So our discussion was kind of to what you're talking about before the budget is once we set the levy, we can't go backwards. So the thinking was, well, let's ask for what we can, make it known to them that this might be available, see if that would change things. It might not change things. Maybe that 17,000 isn't enough to make a difference, in which case we don't need it. It doesn't go to the chamber because our motion was The extra increase is to keep a full-time director, so it's not to be sent for other purposes anyway. So we don't know is the answer there. We were trying to
Chamber
hold
could
the
come and
place
say, we're
just in
not gonna
case.
go with the full-time director. But
To the EDA.
Okay, so when, I guess my next question is gonna be, when do we know when that's gonna happen?
Well, with this approval, then they will go back and plan, right? If this budget is approved tonight, the EDA, the 17,000 extra for the EDA, if this is approved tonight, then the chamber will come to our next EDA meeting with their proposal. And if it includes keeping a full-time director, we've pretty much indicated we have this money to put towards that this year. I think we made it clear, we can't guarantee it every year. And the level may have to change somewhat based on what those other values are, or in a year where we did have another organization we wanted to give to, or an auditor comes and says, you can only go 40 there because you have to have 10 elsewhere. So then with this budget, the EDA will hear from the chamber. Is that correct? I think I'm hearing that correctly or remembering it correctly. And then the EDA, if they're not going to do that, we would probably drop our request back down to
Okay,
the 10 or less, but
so what I'm hearing is that we basically already approved that because we approved the preliminary levy.
Yeah.
So all of this discussion is kind of for naught other than to have a good discussion.
mhm. It's still, it's the EDA's budget now, right?
I understand that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's not totally true because you guys still set the final in December.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
So
yes, true.
But I mean, for right now,
for levy purposes,
Right.
yeah.
because we can change all those numbers in the levy.
Yes, yep.
So,
Anything else for the EDA? Does the chamber want to say anything? You don't need to, but you're free to comment. Okay. Park Board,
Park Board met, didn't have a whole lot. Summer help, pretty much got everything accomplished that they needed to. We talked about the splash pad. The stuff is in to randomize it. That'll probably be either put in this fall or next spring before they open. We talked about maybe setting policy on the splash pad during droughts and different levels of the drought. But we're gonna continue to work on that as we move forward so that we have a policy in place to limit the flow, the hours, whatever, and that, but nothing's set in stone. It's just discussion at this point. Otherwise, there isn't, I think that was it.
We are researching,
Bids on
The-
the surface.
Yes.
yeah,
Epoxy,
Resurfacing.
resurfacing the concrete.
because there's some cracks, or a lot of cracks in all of it. The outer rim, the inner.
And there's
So-
pitting going on.
Yeah.
So I think Kyle, you were gonna get a hold of some,
Get a couple companies. I'll get
couple of
some bids
companies
from.
to get quotes and bids from that to try and fix that.
is it kind of like thinking maybe sealing or coating or something like that?
Kind of like these garage
Garage,
coatings that they do, and they're not slippery, and they can put an additive in there too that makes them grippy. So,
Mhm.
It's kind of,
and they look nice. I
kind of
know.
looks like it's like a sandy grit. It actually will be, what the seal that's on there now, it has some shark bite, I think is what it's called. That seal is actually gonna be slipperier than what we would put over the top of the concrete. Some sand mixed in.
Is there no warranty for what we already have, given that it's such a short amount of time?
It's donated labor.
Donated labor and we paid for the concrete. And it wasn't sod. So, and I'm not sure that I don't know if we would really have much recourse. I don't have, we as the city don't have all of the documents. I need to get all of the documents. Those are not in the city's possession at this point, to look through some of those agreements and things like that. So that is with that committee that planned it. So.
What page is our levy resolution on?
Oh, wish I knew. Well,
Yeah.
do you have your,
I have this one from last year. I'm just looking
Oh.
for this year's.
do you have your bookmarks open?
Page
I don't have
52.
52.
You need to get your laptop set up for your bookmarks because everything's bookmarked and you can just click on it.
Yeah, I'm online,
Oh, okay.
not on,
Oh, well, you're not on your actual PDF.
okay. Yeah, I was just looking at the park fund to see that we added, basically that number that got added there was for water. Yeah, okay.
Some wages and some other stuff.
Yeah, park board was adjusted to allow for, wages, which the guys did, the summer help that we had did absolutely fantastic this year. Never seen those two boys run around so much and getting so much done in one day. It's really good. Yeah, it was wages, increase in water, also to allow for, I think I allowed it for like $2,000 more in their capital outlay to adjust for equipment costs.
How much was the increase for water?
On their, right, I allowed
It was,
for,
yeah, it was just a $6,000 increase.
it's just a $6,000 increase, but
Some of that could be for
per,
water.
per line, okay, if you wanted to go through that, I have it in my office, but
Library board.
The main thing was the approval of the generous donation from Levon Todd, which we did tonight. So thank Levon and family for their generous donation and support to the library. And that's it for library.
Okay, arts board.
Arts, we're in the process of recruiting another student rep to the board. The Fall for Harmony, which is a chamber event, is on September 23rd, but the Arts is doing a beating event at the Visitor Center, which is organized by our student rep Eva Hemingway and organized by the cheerleaders of Fillmore Central. So
Oh.
thank them for their work too. And then we'll have the annual Christmas tree lighting project, which isn't until December, so lots of time on that one. But look forward to sponsoring that event again.
Anything from the fire department?
No, everybody saw the downtown fire, the training. It went good. The water tower held. We have good capacity and a good turnout.
And I think there was another $10,000 donation from the gambling fund.
Hasn't got here yet. but
Not yet.
Hasn't got here. It's on the
I
way.
have to have somebody to sign in the form before it gets here.
Good help. And everybody sees the sheriff's report. Anybody else have anything for our meeting? That's all I got. All right. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Ooh, we spent some money tonight.
Just a little. Want to stretch your legs before you start signing?
Heck no, I've been sitting down all day. I
That's all day. He's fine.
sat all day.
You're clipped. Oh, and I have
Your house looks
cortisone.
great.
Ah.
Driving by it.